Well, time now for the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the political commentator Adam Boulton and the journalist and broadcaster Sonia Sodha. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, London's Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has written an article for The Guardian in which he accuses President Trump of fanning the flames of division, far-right politics around the world. And the ego has landed. That's on the front of the Daily Mirror as President Trump touches down in the UK. The Metro points out that the state visit isn't the only thing in Sir Keir Starmer's in tray. He's also contending with a faltering start to Britain's one-in, one-out immigration deal with France. The Eye also leads on the US president's second state visit to the UK as MPs encourage Starmer to press Donald Trump on the war in Gaza. The Sun also reports on Trump's arrival and writes a migrant plane has travelled to France with nobody on board, with the headline, Air Farce 1. The Mail says Labour's one-in, one-out policy on migration is a fiasco. Its headline, Human Rights Fanatic PM Sunk by Human Rights. We're joined tonight by Adam Boulton and Sonia Sodha. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the front page of the Mirror. What do we rate the headline? The ego has landed. Adam?
Well, it's not bad, is it? I suspect it's been used about Donald Trump elsewhere before, but, you know, it's a pun, obviously, on the eagle has landed. What they're saying, of course, is that the Prime Minister hopes to shore up deals, but before the ink is dry on the Mirror, it appears that he has actually signed those deals. Although, interestingly, there is this kind of balance, if you like, between data processing centres and the small nuclear reactors because they demand a great deal of power. So there's a feeling that perhaps building the nuclear reactors will end up not necessarily benefiting everyone on the grid because they'll be needed to power the supercomputers. And it's interesting they're doing it in the northeast because this has been a disputed site. It was originally going to be a site for making electric batteries. That company failed in spite of receiving a lot of support from the government. Now, and then there was a battle as to whether it should be used for hydrogen, which is one alternative energy source, or for this data centre, and it looks like the data centre has won.
Yes, and there's also going to be a lot of protests planned, but Trump's visit is going to be very stage managed by the government. So they're packing a lot in, but he is being kept away from some of the sites of these key protests. So it's very unlikely that Trump is going to come face to face with protesters. So what's on the cards is that he's staying at the American Embassy tonight. The President and the First Lady go to Windsor tomorrow.
By helicopter.
By helicopter. There's going to be a massive ceremonial welcome. I think it's going to be one of the biggest kind of ceremonial welcomes that any foreign leaders ever received on British soil. And then there's going to be various kind of other banquets. I think Rachel Reeves is hosting a dinner at Chequers tomorrow night for the President. So I think the Brits are all hoping that this is going to come off without a hitch. You know, there's obviously going to be protests, but that these, you know, that you don't, the two shall never meet. And then the big, really big question, apart from the deals that have already been announced, is, of course, whether the government and Starmer can get US tariffs on British steel and aluminium exports to the US lifted. They're currently at 25%. There's been a lot of talk that actually Starmer has been fostering this relationship with Trump in order to get special treatment when it comes to things like these tariffs. I think a bit of an expectation that those tariffs might be lifted altogether. And interestingly, the government is briefing into the press tonight. Actually, that's not going to happen at all. Yeah. So it's interesting.
We thought it might be a bit of expectation management, that perhaps that is going to be the rabbit out of the hat. I mean, it's important to say, though, although this is a state visit, it is all taking place in the secure zone, if you like. It's happening behind the walls of Windsor Castle. And, of course, Chequers is a sealed-off estate. I think there's already been a meeting today between Rachel Reeves and the American Treasury Secretary. And tomorrow there's this big dinner at Windsor Castle, which again is secure. And the most sort of amusing thing of the whole thing is that one of the features of a state visit is you have a carriage procession. And we know that Donald Trump is very interested in that. He's talked about it. But there's going to be a carriage procession behind, on the Windsor estate.
Right.
So they're going to have to, you know, I don't know, bus in the military or something to line the route.
We were talking about protests and protesters, and it's unlikely to see any of them, but we've already had the projections onto the walls, the castle walls at Windsor Castle, images of Jeffrey Epstein, which he definitely will not want to be seeing. And one wonders whether they might be able to breach security while he's actually there.
Well, they've also got a big sheet that they put on the ground that you can see from the air of the famous picture of the president previously with Jeffrey Epstein. So they're going to do what they can to remind him of it.
Absolutely.
Remember the last visit when we had that blimp that was
Yes, indeed.
flown over the Capitol, and again we have the mayor intervening.
Do you know where that blimp is, by the way?
No.
It's been donated to the Museum of London, and it's currently in their archive because they're moving to a new headquarters for the museum, but they say it's going to be on display in their protest exhibition.
Oh, right.
Next year.
But it won't be inflated, though, will it?
Yeah.
Oh, it will be.
They've actually, it's in storage, but they got it out of storage to check it was still inflating, and they're going to inflate.
No holes in it.
Which
Get the
leads us
puncture
to
kit out, otherwise.
Sadiq Khan's intervention
Yes.
in The Guardian, less than helpful, it's being described as.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of putting it. I think it's going to be an annoyance for Starmer that as he's sort of getting ready to greet the president, to have all these conversations about things like tariffs. The Labour mayor of London is coming out and saying, you know, quite incendiary things about Trump. But the thing is, this is nothing new. There's no love lost between Sadiq Khan and Donald Trump. They've both taken pot shots at each other. It was Sadiq Khan, I think, who granted permission for the blimp to fly. So, you know, there really is no love lost between the two of them. So, you know, in some ways, Sadiq Khan comes from a sort of different tradition, the Labour Party. He's not in government. He doesn't need to worry about relations with Trump in quite the same way. But I think it is a symptom of divisions within the Labour Party about how a Labour government should be approaching Trump, whether it should be taking this softly diplomatic approach of Keir Starmer in the hope of, you know, getting special exemptions from things like tariffs, influencing Trump on important areas of foreign policy like Israel, Gaza, or whether, you know, Starmer should be taking a punchy approach. Personally, I think the pragmatic, given that Trump is in the position that he is, I'm not sure we've got the luxury of our Prime Minister going out and sort of making these sorts of statements, but there are certainly people in the Labour Party who would like to see him being punchy.
Well, Khan's saying that
he does say, Sadiq Khan, that he can understand why he's doing it, but just wants to point out that he doesn't like Trump. I mean, this is a long-standing grudge match, because the simple truth is it's one of the tropes of some of MAGA to simply say, you know, you can tell London's going downhill because it's got a Muslim mayor. I mean, it's as crude as that.
Yeah. He's accusing the president of doing more than anyone else to encourage the intolerant far right across the globe. That's his accusation. Let's have a look at the eye, though, regarding Sir Keir Starmer and what he might discuss with the president. Reported that he's going to press him on Israel. Sonia?
Yeah, I mean, he's under a lot of pressure to do that from his own party. It has been briefed in advance that he's going to talk about Israel. And of course, this comes as, you know, the United Nations have absolutely condemned what is happening as the Israeli army, the IDF, goes into Gaza City and basically seems to want to pulverise everything that isn't there and to force out the people. So I think this is a sensitive topic. They'll certainly be asked about it at their news conference, but I mean, they'll have private discussions, and the Americans are not in favour of the recognition of a Palestinian state, which Britain and France are preparing to do at the UN General Assembly. But I suspect, you know, they will agree to differ on that. I mean, remember that this week the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has been having friendly talks with Netanyahu and appeared with him at the Wailing Wall. And so the Americans clearly are on a different page from the British as far as Israel's war in Gaza.
But it will be, well, more than awkward. Awkward's not the word to describe, the UN Commission saying that Israel's committed genocide.
Reminds me a bit of sort of human rights in China. That, you always say, oh, yeah, we raised it. And then everyone agrees to disagree.
Yeah.
OK, Adam and Sonia, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, the government's one-in, one-out migration deal with France gets off to a faltering start. We'll discuss that next. Do stay with us.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
Those vivid colours of summer have faded now, but the trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation. We lost 3 of them.
Ruda Cabana's guilty pleas mean they won't have to relive what they saw in court, but everyone here tells you they'll carry it for the rest of their lives. You see people running red lights time after time after time. This is an offence that sometimes has the most awful of consequences.
When you speed through a pedestrian crossing, there is a risk that you could batter somebody to death. She filled our lives with light. She was innocent, she was happy.
I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
He had a beautiful death. He fell asleep in my arms. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
Some very familiar faces. Go ahead.
Mr. President, what can our Prime Minister say to you?
Sky News.
That's him. That's him.
He called you Daddy.
In the back.
We are.
Ready.
And waiting
For you, President Trump.
Next question.
So can I ask you, sir?
Don't miss a moment of President Trump's historic second state visit to the UK as we bring you live and continuous coverage.
Did you find it exciting?
Get the full story first on Sky News.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Adam Boulton and Sonia Sodha. Let's take a look at the front page of the Sun. Air Farce 1 is their headline, not referring to Donald Trump, but to the one-in, one-out deal that has been struck with France. Descended into fresh farce yesterday when a plane left for France with no migrants on board. What's happened, Adam?
Well, as we know, we've heard a lot that the one-in, one-out deal is going to be a way of eventually discouraging people from crossing the channel in boats. Now, what happened was there had been briefing from government sources that they were going to get the first migrants out. And I don't know quite how these things work, but there were certainly journalists on the plane to see the migrants being transported. But an Eritrean went to court saying that he had grounds for not being deported, and that meant that no one was put on the plane. So the Sun journalist certainly was left picturing himself by rows of empty seats paid for by the taxpayer on Air France with no one being deported. So it's definitely a slip-up. I mean, it's reminiscent of the problems previously with the Rwanda programme. You may remember when planes were about to take off and they haven't taken off. But, you know, times are difficult for the Starmer government, and this is certainly not going to help.
This is catastrophic for the government, isn't it?
It's really difficult for them politically. I don't think it's a massive surprise that this happened. There were a lot of lawyers saying that there are going to be legal challenges to the French scheme. And what's happened here is this man from Eritrea, he claimed that he would be destitute, and actually the judge dismissed that as a basis for sort of temporarily blocking his deportation. But he's also claimed to be a victim of modern slavery, and he's not been given a chance. He's not been given enough time to prove those allegations and provide evidence. So that is the basis on which the judge has issued this temporary injunction. And it was always quite clear, I think, speaking to lawyers, that there were going to be legal challenges to this scheme. And I think the government had to hope that they were going to work themselves through much more quickly than with Rwanda, because in some ways it should be legally more straightforward, and hopefully the government's got a better chance of getting it through the courts than the Rwanda scheme, which I think was always really doomed to fail in some ways from the beginning. But politically, it's really, really problematic because you've got reform to the right of the Conservatives. This is the big issue that they are seeking to make hay on in relation to the Labour government, and you've had the Labour government say, well, look, we've negotiated this scheme with France and it's going to be the answer. And some might say they were really setting themselves up to be a hostage to fortune, because there were always going to be these issues with the courts, even if they resolved themselves.
I don't quite understand why, if they had a party of people that they were going to put on the plane, why one person having a legal case stopped them putting the others on the plane. Do you?
No, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure how many were due to be on that plane. All we know is that this man was meant to be the first person. So I'm not sure, but there are definitely other legal question marks. I think that's what some of the lawyers involved. You're working for a charity representing these sort of asylum seekers have said. So, yeah, I'm not 100% clear on that. But
I think they're two separate instances, aren't they? Because it said it could leave Labour's returns deal in legal limbo for months. A dramatic court ruling came after attempts to deport other migrants aboard 2 flights from Heathrow Airport were blocked by separate last-minute legal action.
Right. So there's been multiple, yeah. So yeah, it was always there was always a really good chance that this was going to need to work itself through the courts, but it does provide these headlines. I do think it's very rich, though, of the Conservatives to be saying, oh well, we said this was going to happen, and the government just needs to disapply the European Convention on Human Rights to immigration policy, and it'll all be fine. It doesn't work like that, where you're either part of the European Convention on Human Rights, and there are specific provisions under which you can suspend some parts, not all articles though, but there are very tight restrictions on when that happens, and this is not one of those cases. So the Tories are essentially just making stuff up on the hoof when it comes to policy, and that's not very satisfactory either.
We've only got about 30 seconds. We want to talk about Robert Redford, who's died at the age of 89, front page of the Daily Star.
Yeah, the Lion of Hollywood. That really is a quote from Meryl Streep, who, of course, appeared with him in films, saying that he was one of the lions. And, you know, it's interesting, actually. He was very, very dominant in the 70s.
He was
in Hollywood.
The heartthrob of those times. Adam and Sonia, thank you.
Our app
app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
It's 11 o'clock. This is Sky News' extended press preview. Our top story. President Trump arrives in the UK for an unprecedented second state visit. He says he's looking forward to seeing the King.
It's an honor to have him as King. And, you know, I think he represents the country so well. I've watched. He's such an elegant gentleman.
Mr. Trump and the First Lady are spending the night at the US ambassador's residence before 2 days of pageantry and politics. In Kiev, President Zelensky gives Sky News a message for the US president and Sir Keir Starmer to take strong personal steps to stop Vladimir Putin's war.
I'll jump first. No. Then you jump first. No, I said. What's the matter with you? I can't swim!
Tribute to Hollywood legend Robert Redford, who's died at the age of 89. Over the next hour, we'll be discussing today's news with our reviewers, Adam Boulton and Sonia Sodha. And later, we'll have a full run-through of tomorrow's front pages. Good evening. Donald Trump's second state visit as US President has begun, and it promises to be quite the 48 hours of pageantry and politics. Mr. Trump was upbeat as he left Washington, praising both the King and Sir Keir Starmer, and equally effusive as he touched down. For the Prime Minister, the stakes are high. He wants to talk about trade deals and boosting support for Ukraine. Less keen, perhaps, to discuss political controversies, including the sacking of Lord Mandelson over his links to American paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And over the next hour, we'll bring you tonight's headlines, tomorrow's front pages, and the views of our paper reviewers, the political commentator, Adam Boulton, and the journalist and broadcaster, Sonia Sodha. But first, this report from our US correspondent, Mark Stone.
Touchdown for Air Force One and an historic second state visit to the UK for President Donald Trump. A smile and a spring in his step, maybe, because he's been looking forward to this. On the tarmac, protocol dictates it's the Foreign Secretary to greet him, Yvette Cooper in the job just a couple of weeks, and hoping no one remembers her visceral criticism of the president in the past. He is the man she called a threat to democracy in 2019, abandoning allies, she said, a misogynist. He may still be that to many, but now, unlike then, he holds the cards and he calls the shots.
And so that's what this second state visit is all about. It is an acceptance from the UK that it's not just important to be close to America. The British government's position is that it's vital to be close to Trump's America. It is in their national interests for trade, for security, and for foreign policy.
Before leaving, a clear indication of how much he's relishing this moment, how fond he is of the British pomp ahead.
My relationship is very good with the UK, and Charles, as you know, who's now king, is my friend. And it's the first time this has ever happened where somebody was honored twice, so it's a great honor. And this one's at Windsor. They've never used Windsor Castle for this before. They used Buckingham Palace.
And a hint, too, of the reward for the UK.
They're also on trade. They want to see if they can refine the trade deal a little bit. We made a deal, and it's a great deal. And I'm into helping them. Primarily, it's to be with Prince Charles and Camilla. They're friends of mine for a long time, long before he was king. And it's an honor to have him as king. And, you know, I think he represents the country so well. I've watched. He's such an elegant gentleman, and he represents the country so well.
The British charm offensive began in February.
This is unprecedented, and I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us.
Starmer ignored the critics, and it paid off, a trade deal of sorts. Certainly the UK was put in a better position than most, if not all other countries globally.
The relationship that we have is fantastic, because I like them, that's why. That's their ultimate protection.
It was, of course, the now fired ambassador, Peter Mandelson, who got that deal, the reward of appointing him before the risk did it for him.
Peter Mandelson actually did broker a real relationship with MAGA. I mean, it was an incredible act of shape-shifting, but he did it.
Lord Maurice Glassman knows Trump well, a Labour peer close to Team Trump, a rare thing.
It's hard to overestimate the extent to which he sees himself as a king. I mean, this is real. I mean, very, very real. So it's a huge change, this administration, from the republic to a monarchy. I mean, it's that big. I compare Trump to Julius Caesar or Napoleon, who did that change.
Dump Trump, dump Trump, dump Trump.
For now, the protests don't match those from the last state visit. Not close.
He's a friend of a paedophile. He's a convicted felon. I don't think a man like that should be in this country with all this pomp and ceremony laid on for him.
That paedophile is Jeffrey Epstein, and he is the jeopardy here. Mandelson's friendship with him is a threat to Starmer now. Trump can't shake his historic association with Epstein, and then by association through his brother, the king is linked too. Of course, the other gamble is that this is a president who changes his mind, shifts position. The next few days are Britain's attempt to prevent that, to cement the special relationship. Mark Stone, Sky News in Stansted.
Let's see how tomorrow's newspapers are reacting to that story. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan has written an article for The Guardian in which he accuses President Trump of fanning the flames of divisive far-right politics around the world. The eye also leads on the US president's second state visit to the UK, as MPs encouraged Starmer to press Donald Trump on the war in Gaza. And the ego has landed. That is on the front of the Daily Mirror as President Trump touches down in the UK. Let's get our thoughts now of Adam and Sonia. And this visit, extremely important. We all saw how it was brokered in the Oval Office with Sir Keir Starmer revealing that envelope to President Trump's absolute glee. He's cock-a-hook at coming to the UK on this second unprecedented state visit. And he's even upgraded it by saying that, you know, he's going to be at Windsor rather than Buckingham Palace, because Windsor is the place to be.
That's right. I mean, it's quite extraordinary watching him describe his relationship with the King, you know, Charles, who I was friends with long before he became king, and, you know, talking about him as an elegant gentleman. I think only sort of Donald Trump would be able to drop the formalities and sort of talk about the King on an official state visit in that way. There's loads on Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister's to-do list. So much he's got to discuss. You know, there's been this announcement of a deal, a technology deal tonight, which I think the government will be really pleased about. But the really massive prize was, can the government get those 25% tariffs, US tariffs, on British steel and aluminium exports to the US lifted? We already were in a better position than most of the rest of the world. Most of the rest of the world is facing 50% tariffs, but the government really wanted to get them lifted to help with the sort of dire economic situation which the country is in, with growth not strong and not where it should be. And actually, it seems like that might be a bit of a sort of a wet fish in some ways. You've got the government briefing into the papers, really talking that down. It doesn't seem like it's on the cards. There's also going to be foreign policy to discuss, Israel, Gaza. Obviously, the US and the UK are in quite different positions on that now. The UK has become much more critical of Israel in recent weeks and months. The US has still got quite a friendly relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu. There will also be Russia, Ukraine as well. So huge to-do list. But I think Downing Street is just going to be hoping this goes off, you know, without any mishaps. Donald Trump leads happy, and it's very much part of their pragmatic strategy of trying to keep Trump close despite all his unpredictabilities and despite the sort of political differences, trying to get the best for the UK and you know, for Europe from that relationship.
You mentioned the potential deals there. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, who's standing by. And Tamara, there is a tech deal that's already been signed off.
Yes, a tech deal struck between the UK and the US and announced just as Donald Trump touched down in Britain. It's intended to be a good news story about American companies investing and showing confidence in the UK. It covers AI, in which the UK is seen as a global leader, quantum computing, which is using these powerful computers to solve problems, particularly in medicine, and nuclear power, a new generation of reactors, which may take some years to come to fruition, but the idea is that eventually energy bills will come down. Keir Starmer is calling it a step change in the special relationship between the US and the UK. And of the £31 billion of investment that American companies are bringing in alongside this deal, the lion's share, $22 billion, comes from Microsoft, which will be behind a new AI centre in the northeast of England in Teesside that will be developed over the next few years, and thousands of jobs all over the country as a result of these changes. The Prime Minister will talk about security and prosperity as a result of America's vote of confidence in the UK. Now, of course, back in June, the Prime Minister and President struck a trade deal, which was essentially as a result of US tariffs. But although the UK has ended up with lower tariffs on cars, for example, than other parts of Europe, Tariffs on steel are still at 25%, and that is becoming very difficult for the steel industry. And it's the UK's intention over the next couple of days to work on Donald Trump. He said as he left that they wanted to refine the great deal they had struck in order to get those down. So that is the challenge of the next couple of days as Keir Starmer and Donald Trump meet on the second day of his visit, when he finishes with the royal pageantry and heads to Chequers for political talks. But it's hoped that this tech deal will be a good news story to come out of the visit if it isn't overshadowed by other things.
Tamara, thank you very much for the moment. Well, Adam, this is what it's all about, isn't it, really? The deals and what can be secured.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is it looks like, from what we saw as Donald Trump was leaving the White House, that he's in the mood to play nice, very flattering about King Charles. I just see on the front of the Times, they caught the picture of him coming down onto the tarmac at Stansted Airport, and you can just see the lining of Melania's coat, and she's wearing that British brand Burberry. So I think they are, trying to send the signals out that things are going to go well. And, the truth of the matter is, whatever you think about it, kind of grovelling sycophancy and flattery towards Donald Trump appears to work. And the UK at the moment does have, I mean, it's not better, it's less bad. We've only got 10% tariffs rather than 15%. We have got this problem with the steel. But, Keir Starmer's strategy, and indeed Peter Mandelson's strategy of just, love bombing Donald Trump with flattery really works. And the other point, I think it was a very good one made by Lord Glassman in that report from Mark, that Donald Trump is really interested in meeting the king. The king is our ace of trumps, if we could put it, mix a metaphor. And it's interesting that Fiona Hill, the military strategist who worked for Trump in the last administration, has made exactly the same point, saying that what Trump is really interested in is a dynasty, is behaving like a king, and therefore being best mates with a real king is something that he's very interested in.
And Sonia, do you think that Trump identifies the flattery and the sycophancy as what it is? And if he does that mean he respects those people less?
No, I think Adam's right. I think it does work with him. I think he does like to be flattered. I think that's sort of partly his personality and who he is. But
does he identify it as flattery rather than thinking, well, they're just telling me the truth?
He believes it.
No, well, yeah. I think yeah. I think he thinks people are sort of paying their due to him in the way that they ought to. So, I mean, I think he's just quite an extraordinary character, and it's incredible that somebody with that personality has sort of ended up not once, but, twice in the White House. But he's incredibly unpredictable. I think he's unlike any other president that the US has seen before. And yes, sucking up to him really does work.
Well, one person who isn't sucking up to him is the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan. He's saying that he fans the flames of division and has written as much in The Guardian. Adam?
Yeah, they have a grudge match that's been running for a long time. And Sadiq Khan, of course, is as a Muslim politician and mayor, is just not the cup of tea of the MAGA movement. And what we've got Keir Starmer this time round having to cope with is the fact that the Labour politician with the biggest personal mandate is the Mayor of London, and he's making it very clear that he thinks that Donald Trump has perhaps done the most to fan the flames of division and right-wing politics around the world in recent years. And I think, some people will connect this to Andy Burnham as well, and, alternative voices in the Labour Party, alternative leadership voices, making it clear that perhaps the successful sycophancy towards Donald Trump is not something they would do if they were in charge.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think if Keir Starmer were a really strong Prime Minister with lots of backing from his parliamentary Labour Party, he could weather Sadiq Khan coming out and sort of making these comments and, sort of say, look, we're a broad church in the Labour Party, and actually, you know, he represents a different set of views, and maybe, you know, he would feel that actually having that broad church would work for him with his members, many of whom will feel more like Sadiq Khan than the sort of, you know, very pragmatic, softly approach that Starmer's taken with Trump. The issue is that he's such a weakened Prime Minister now, and that was true before the summer. It's even more true after, you know, these 2 or 3 resignations that we've seen in the very short period since Parliament has come back at the start of September. He's so weakened that when you get these big Labour figures from the regions, you know, Sadiq Khan in London, Andy Burnham in Manchester, sort of making no secret of the fact that they might be playing things differently, or they think the Prime Minister should be playing things differently, it's very difficult because he's weak.
We had shown some pictures of the projections put on the Windsor Castle walls. Other people who
really striking,
quite critical of Donald Trump. And just to say the breaking news on that is that 4 adults have been arrested on suspicion of malicious communications following a public stunt in Windsor, and all 4 remain in custody at this time.
Malicious communication.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be be interesting to see what was projected that is linked to that allegation.
Yeah. The Chief Superintendent is saying, this is Felicity Parker, we take any unauthorised activity around Windsor Castle extremely seriously. Our officers responded swiftly to stop the projection. 4 people have been arrested. We're conducting a thorough investigation with our partners into the circumstances surrounding this incident, and will provide further updates when we are in a position to do so.
But there's unauthorised and there's malicious communications. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes out about that.
I can't believe they'll ever be prosecuted. I suspect they'll be arrested and...
Well, we shall see. But the thing is, Donald Trump will have seen these images, won't he? So you wonder what...
Well, will he?
I'm sure he will.
Well, we know he's a avid watcher of television news. So perhaps he's watching us right now.
He could very well be.
Sorry, Donald.
Good evening, Mr. President. We're going to take a look now at... we're going to move on to Ukraine, and President Zelensky has a message for President Trump and Sir Keir Starmer about Ukraine's war with Russia. In an exclusive interview with my colleague Yalda Hakim, the Ukrainian leader urged Sir Keir Starmer to push the US president for a written agreement to guarantee Ukraine's security. Let's take a listen to some of that conversation.
Mr. President, Donald Trump is coming to the UK for a second state visit. What message do you have to him?
I very much hope that Prime Minister Starmer will be able to have a very specific discussion on the security guarantees of the United States for Ukraine. And before we end the war, I really want to have all the agreements in place. I want to have a document that is supported by the US and all European partners. This is very important. This is a very motivating thing for a Ukrainian military, so that they realize we will end the war and we will be protected. And to make this happen, we need a clear position of the President Trump. Next, we should be able to buy any weapons, except the nuclear weapons, of course, from the United States. Important weapons, missiles, rockets, etc. For us, this is very important. And the third point, strong personal steps made by President Trump to stop Putin.
Volodymyr Zelensky speaking to Yalda Hakim there. And Adam, certainly clear that he wants Sir Keir Starmer to push Donald Trump on this in terms of guaranteeing Ukraine's security.
Yeah, and we can also see that this softly game of trying to seduce Donald Trump towards taking a harder position has been going on for a long time. You remember Keir Starmer went over to the White House when Zelensky was there with the other European leaders, and again, they were fulsomely flattering towards Zelensky, and Zelensky too was flattering towards Donald Trump after his previous experience. The good news, if you like, is that Trump this week, for the first time, did refer to Russia as the aggressor in the conflict, which may seem obvious to us, but it's something that, you know, his supporters have been resisting, saying that somehow they say Zelensky provoked the invasion of his own country. The bad news is that Donald Trump is now caveating doing anything further, saying to the Europeans, you've got to stop buying Russian oil. And, you know, that has been going on, and Ed Conway on this station has shown how people are getting around the sanctions in other sorts of trade as well. And, you know, if he doesn't want to do anything, he can legitimately point the finger and say, well, you know, you're not exactly putting your actions where your mouth is.
Sonia, do you think something is different now that Donald Trump is on UK soil? We know, we've heard from President Zelensky and know how he wants the direction of conversation to go with Sir Keir Starmer. Do you think that this point in time is any different to previously?
Well, I hope I'm wrong, but no, I don't think so. I think Trump is quite good at sort of making sympathetic noises when he's in the sort of position where he needs to make them. You know, for example, disagreements over Gaza, Israel, and the recognition of Palestine as a state. Back when the UK said that it was going to do it subject to certain conditions being made, he just sort of, he didn't go full out attack on the UK. He just kind of tossed it aside and said, well, you know, we're going to agree to disagree on this one. And I'm afraid that I'm not sure that the flattery works in terms of shifting Trump substantially on foreign policy positions. And I think it's really good, for example, that it's extraordinary that it's taken so long, but he's referred to Russia as the aggressor. But I think that when it comes down to it, Trump does not want to be footing the bill for security guarantees for Ukraine and for Europe from Russia. He wants Europe to be stepping up. And that's quite worrying, given the role that the US has played as sort of the world's policeman and its critical role in NATO. But I think the truth is that, you know, he's very much America first. He doesn't want to be doing that. I think on Israel-Gaza, there is a real difference of opinion as well. And I think the UK can try and shift Trump to a position where he uses his influence on Netanyahu to try and get Israel to sort of pull back from Gaza. But I think the truth is that it's very hard to make Trump do something that he doesn't really want to do.
That is going to be a another very difficult conversation with the president, isn't it?
Yes, although, again, the extent to which it gets beyond accepting each other's position is, I think, an open question. And the problem with that is that, to a certain extent, expectations have been built up that the Starmer is going to talk tough on Israel and talk tough on Ukraine, and I just can't see that happening.
Do you think anything concrete will be, aside from the trade deals, in terms of, you know, the international situation, the geopolitical situation with Israel, with Ukraine? Do you think anything concrete will come from these talks?
I mean, I'm pretty pessimistic, but maybe I'm being too pessimistic. Maybe something will be pulled out of the bag. I just feel it's not like where the US is, and I don't really see how this state visit. I think, you know, it does work when it comes to economics and getting special deals for the UK on trade deals. I'm not sure it works on foreign policy in quite the same way. I wish it did, because I wish the US were closer to us on policy when it came to Israel and Gaza and Ukraine and Russia. But I don't. Do you,
Very quickly, Adam, what do you agree?
I share your cynicism, I'm afraid.
Oh, in agreement. We'll stop there while you agree. Thanks very much for the moment. You are watching the press preview. Coming up, The Star and many other newspapers paying tribute to Hollywood icon Robert Redford, who died today. We'll discuss his remarkable career when we come back. Stay with us.